Welcome to the Lesson 11 Workbook exercise video for Hebrew 1 and 2, Bright Old Testament 502-504 online edition. Today we are moving on to the imperfect verb, the strong verb in terms of the strong form where the consonants don't change, but still throwing a new set of endings and beginnings at you, since the imperfect uses prefixes as well as suffixes. Hopefully, as you've watched the introductory video, this content has made sense, and now we'll put it into practice as we do our exercises together. So let's get started. I'm not going to go into great detail about most of the exercises in the versed section here of the exercise assignment, because it's simply the identification of the prefix and the suffix, or the preformative and sufformative, that are placed on the verb stem in order to create the imperfect form. So you're simply going through and parsing these. I am, however, going to single out number 3 and number 8 because, in a sense, they are trick questions. It's not that the form themselves is confusing, but the identification of them may be a little confusing and a little tricky, let's say. So go ahead and take a stab at number 3 and number 8, and then we will walk through these together. Number 3 is tricky because the only clue that we have that we are dealing with an imperfect here is the tav. Although the hirik under the tav and the holum over the bait are dead giveaways that we're dealing with a yik tol, with an imperfect form here. However, as you look at your chart and your paradigm, you'll notice that two verb forms in the imperfect begin with a tav. The imperfect 3fs, third feminine singular, as well as the 2ms, second person masculine singular. Technically, as we look at number 3, there is not enough information to differentiate the two. Obviously, if we were reading this in context, we would understand if it was she, because we would know that we are dealing with a woman, that she gathered. Or we would know that we're talking to a man, you gathered. Either way, we have to parse this on our little chart here as a 3fs and a 2ms. Because without the context, we really can't tell. Now I'll give you a clue. The same is true of number 8. It is a trick question in the same sort of way. So what are the two forms that are identified in number 8? The tricky nature of number 8 is that we have two forms that begin with the tav and end with the nun kametz he, the third person feminine plural and the second person feminine plural. In number 3, we actually cross genders, going from a third feminine to a second masculine. At least here in number 8, we have stayed within the feminine plural, just simply gone from third person to second person. Context would have to tell us if we're talking about a group of women or talking to a group of women. One last note there in number 8 is that the accent is on the third to last syllable, not the second to last. That is a vocal schwa under the last root consonant, under the resh. So this is not tis korna, because this is a long O, a holum. This is actually tis korana, where we have it not on the ultimate syllable, not on the penultimate, but on the pre-penultimate syllable. Very unusual, very rare, occurring only in the imperfect in this form with the na, the nun kametz he, at the end. I'm also not going to go into great detail on how you conjugate these particular verbs, because again, it's simply a matter of identification, and you can find most of the information in your workbook, simply adding on the prefixes and suffixes the way we've already seen with other forms, including objects or even in the perfect tense. But I do want to single out a couple of these. That's number 1 and 2, 8 and 9. Now, I know in your homework you only had to do the odds, but I wanted to have more than just 2 examples here. So even though you're not doing number 2 and number 8, I still wanted to highlight them here. So go ahead and take an attempt at number 1 and number 9, and then I will walk you through all 4 of them at the same time. I chose number 1 and 2 because they are the standard form of the imperfect, an I-class vowel under the preformative, which is a segol in number 1, ektol, and a hirik in number 2, yimkor, and then followed by a holum over the second root consonant, over the tate in number 1 and over the kaf in number 2. Number 8 and number 9, though, are a little more tricky. I chose these two because of the rest of the list, which is fairly standard. Number 8 and number 9 stand out as somewhat unique. So go ahead and take an effort at those. They're a little tricky because number 8 and number 9 actually give you the exact same answer. Remember, the third feminine plural and the second feminine plural have the same preformative and subformative. A tav plus a nun plus a hey. So that we get tishmorana in both of these. Again, a little tricky, but you should be able to master it, that third feminine plural and second feminine plural are exactly the same. Section 3 of your workbook has to do with translation of Hebrew passages. So why don't you go ahead and take a stab at the first line here, translating it and identifying it in English. Ha-shofatim is the word shofatim, which comes from the verb shafat. This is actually a participle that has now become known as a noun. A shofatim, or judges, plural, with the hirik yod mem ending. The hey at the beginning is the definite article. The judges. And then we have the imperfect. Yishmaru. They will keep. We have the yod on the beginning of the word, and then we have a shurik at the end of the word. They will keep from shamar. And then the direct object marker, et Torah, and then Elohim, whose law it is in a construct relationship. The judges will keep the law of God. Now try number 2. Lo at the beginning of this phrase is actually a negation. Do not ever. This is never, ever, ever. Do not do this. It's not just you will not make, but in context, do not make. It's not an imperative, because in negative imperatives in Hebrew actually use lo plus the imperfect. Our imperfect here is tikratu, with a tav hirik as the prefix and a shurik as the suffix. This is the form of the second masculine plural. You shall not make. And then we're told what you shall not make. Barit, a covenant. And then et is not the direct object marker. It's actually the preposition with. Ameh, you shall not make a covenant with people. Haaretz, of the land. Since haaretz is definite, ameh becomes definite. You will not make a covenant with the people of the land. Try number 3, keeping in mind that the kaf after the lamed in that first word, hamelech, has been removed because my computer does not like the letter K for some odd reason. Hamelech is, of course, the king, and Hamalka is the queen, and then we are told Yimlaku, they will reign. We know that this is a third-person masculine plural from malak, to reign, because of the presence of the yod and the shurik at the end. Again, as I discussed in the instructional video, a shurik at the end of a word with a preformative is oftentimes a plural of that form. So with a yod, without the shurik, we would have third-person masculine singular. Put a shurik at the end, it becomes third-person masculine plural. The same with number 2, tikratu. If we didn't have the shurik at the end and we just had tikrat, we would know that this is second-person singular. But because of the shurik at the end, it becomes second-person plural. That's how we know that this is they will reign, yamlaku. And then we're told where they will reign, Barushalayim, in Jerusalem. The king and the queen will reign, Yimlaku, in Jerusalem. Now try number 4. The hey at the beginning of this next phrase is not the definite article, but the interrogative particle. This is a question mark. Will, and then the question. The verb is tisrafu, will you burn, from saraf, to burn. We have the tav at the beginning, which tells us that this is second person masculine, or it could be third person feminine, singular, either case. But the shurik at the end tells us that nope, this is masculine plural, and that it is second person still because of that tav. We have the et direct object marker, followed by ha'arim, ha'ra'ot, the evil cities. We notice that ha'ra'ot is feminine plural, even though we have arim. That's because arim is very unusual in that it takes masculine plural endings even though it is feminine plural. You'll notice the definite article on the adjective telling us that it goes with the cities. So this is not evil fire, ba'osh. This is actually the evil of the cities. So will you burn the evil cities? And then an instrumental use of ba with our bait preposition here, and then fire, ba'esh. Will you burn the cities with fire? Our final phrase here is a declaration, bayom, on that day, on the day. We have the definite article under the bait, but we have hahu, that, which follows yom. So on that day, I will seek, from darosh. I will seek with the aleph with the segol. I will seek, and then the direct object marker, followed by Adonai, et Adonai. In that day, or on that day, I will seek the Lord. Well, that brings us to the end of our exercises. Hopefully this has helped us solidify the information on the imperfect verb. Make sure that you learn the preformatives and the subformatives, the prefixes and the suffixes for this particular verb form, as these will remain the same across all of the different types of verbs. There are only perfect and imperfect in Hebrew, and now you know both. You're well on your way. You can use your Bible to check your homework on the last section of your exercises. Don't look at the Bible until you've done them. Make sure you take your vocabulary quiz and be ready for your next class.